everybody, and welcome back to Command Value 1. Quick turnaround. We recorded not that long ago, but some magnificent individual shared the cast in, I believe it was Discord, and said that the 6 minutes of Drop Zone we talked was more than the 0 minutes all the other podcasts that had been shared and talked. So we decided that it was our calling to come back and discuss the Errata that has recently been released. I'm joined tonight by Jordan.
Hello.
Josh.
Hey, everybody.
And newcomer to the cast, but longtime playtester with us, Kirill.
Howdy ho.
So let's just dive directly into this. The Errata itself is actually rather short. We've got unit types, which I don't know that did this require much clarification, guys? To be in coherency, you have to be in coherency, is essentially how that reads?
It actually did, because there was a lot of talk about what was incoherency and what would factor into having, was the +1 to hit or whatever it was, +2 to hit, for being out of coherency. There was actually quite a bit of discussion on this topic, so it did need to be addressed.
Alrighty. Nothing that's a significant change here. Aircraft is the next one. The change the last sentence to all flight stands should be between 50 millimeters and 70 millimeters tall, and add the third paragraph in landed aircraft cannot carry or claim objectives. I thought that it was pretty clear that aircraft could never carry objectives anyways, only units carrying objectives.
The upper part, though, where it explicitly says 50 to 70 millimeter is a good notion, because I think that does eliminate the old super short, small flight stand height.
I don't know if it's good for Americans.
Right. But it stops people from modeling for advantage, though.
Sure. All right. Bloodthirsty. Delete within 1 inch of an enemy unit or. That's on page 54, but it's not on page 54 unless it's on page 54 of a book that's not BFE or the digital rules. But does anyone know precisely what that means to Bloodthirsty? Josh, I think you were looking it up earlier.
Yeah, let me go back to that real quick. So basically, there's just been changes to how you can melee attack and stuff, but it's really not that big of a change. It just keeps you in the building, I think, is what it does now.
Yeah, if you're bloodthirsty, you can't leave a building, and your search is worse. So basically, if you're in the building with someone else, you explicitly can't leave if you have bloodthirsty.
Blood for the guy who really likes blood, because we don't want to anger another company. Fast. Add to the end of the second paragraph, fast units cannot land. I've been playing Antares, and I'm like, yeah, they can. They can put those little scooters right in their compression drones. But it's the wrong system. Who would have thunk that a jet fighter could not land in the middle of the street after making an attack run?
Well, this being TT combat, I suspect in 6 months there will be a new unit that can do this.
The Cobra Rattler could do it. I'm just saying.
But no, it's a fine. I mean, most of these errata changes are just more clarifications than anything game breaking.
Page 57 or not. Area. Add if an area weapon targets an infantry unit on the edge of a garrison. Do not place the template. Instead, every unit on that edge is hit for D6 hits. An infantry unit on the edge of a garrison that is touched by the template but not the target of the shooting action is not hit.
So we were kind of deconstructing this pre-recording, and basically the way we're all reading it is basically if you shot from the same wall with two separate squads, that would be two separate units, and your opponent shoots an area weapon at you, he has to choose one squad or the other to put that template against.
Yeah, if you had like a squad of destroyers and then just regular warriors, they have to choose if it's just going to be the destroyers or the warriors hit. You would not be able to claim every unit on that facing as being hit, which is it's an okay change. I mean, that makes
a lot of sense, because right now I'm reading Rick Atkinson's Day of Battle, which is about the invasion of Sicily and Italy from 43 to 44, and they talk explicitly about how U.S. artillery will only hit one squad of grenadiers or the other when those large ass shells landed on them. So,
yeah, I think this is a balance between being realism and trying to be balanced. And I think they were afraid of the area of weapon being. I'm gonna
halt you before you try to defend how bad area weapons are in version 2 by the fact that they had kind of fucked themselves on any type of fair balance to area weapons when they removed all the templates to just a 4-inch template for anything that does area.
Now, wait a second. As the person who came up with the actual area rules for version 2, I feel offended by that.
Is this rule your fault
be
too?
As offended as you want, man. But
well, I was told that we only have one template. What are we going to do? So the rules that are in the version 2 rulebook are my suggestions.
Yeah, well, Josh, no matter how you polish a turd, page 59 or not is strafe. Change units within 3 inches of at least one other, or change 2 units within at least 3 inches. So anyways, if I'm not mistaken, it was 6 inches before, correct? Like original BFE was 6 inches. It was stupid large. 3 inches is version 1.1's distance. You had to be within 3 inches to strafe. And I'm fine with that. The strafe rules are weird anyways in version 2. I get them now. I understand them now. It was an unnecessary change. Like so many of the changes were, but
I don't like the strafe rules, but I will use on resistance helicopters.
You were cutting out on me.
You went all
there,
robot-y.
sir.
Oh, turn off the video. I think that's eating your bandwidth.
God, what podcasting noob. What were you saying, Kirill?
I'm saying that the strafe rules just don't make any sense, and I'm not a fan, but I will use the crap out of them on my resistance helicopters.
Because it makes the Strike Hawk pretty good shooting wise.
Well, Strike Hawk isn't any good transport wise anymore, so
no.
So now we're moving to the biggest change, which is experimental. So it's not.
Yeah, I don't want to jump on that quite yet.
Okay, all right. I'll give you your soapbox.
No. That's for later. These are basically benign changes. They don't hurt the rule set at all. They are pretty unoffensive and don't really change anything. So
no, they're clarifications more than.
I don't know that I call us. Yeah, this is pretty weak as far as Errata goes, but yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's bounce over to the hidden objective thing, the experimental rule. Josh, you were starting to say, have at.
All right. So the experimental rules. This is not official in any way, shape, or form, but they are throwing this out there as a way to say, hey, we might consider slowing the game down as far as grabbing objectives. And this has a lot of repercussions as far as how the game plays. I do suspect, though, if you were to go to a tournament post-COVID, that you will have this rule in place, because I feel it is a better rule for the game. I'm actually a little surprised that this rule came out, because it really doesn't address the close quarters combat that everybody's dealing with. It just kind of slows the searching down. So let's talk about the rule.
If you excuse me, I have to go get my soapbox.
A friendly infantry or vehicle squad in coherency with at least one unit within 2 inches of a hidden objective or in the same garrison as a hidden objective may make a special search action, counting as both of their actions for the round. A hidden objective in a garrison may only be searched for by squads in the same garrison. So what this means, your units coming out of APCs like warriors, invaders, Junos, your kind of ground force. What?
No one comes out of a Juno because they're fucking worthless.
That's your soapbox for later, not for right now.
Yeah. We'll come back to that. So your ground forces will not be able to search for objectives this turn. The turn they enter a building. Okay. But that will allow the light transports, the people who are being deployed from aircraft, to be able to search, because they will still have both activations after they get dumped into a building.
Which means
because they
we're
get
back.
They get dumped in there on the aerial transport's turn, not
transport poops them out,
not the infantry's turn.
This puts us right back to one of the things that, as part of the beta team, we tried to fix from version 1, that being how incredibly superior light dropships were to using a transport and a dropship. We literally, none of us had ground transports in our army because we're like, fuck yeah, I need myself about a dozen bear. We had them because we bought multiple UCM starter sets.
Now, I will say this isn't really. You're slightly slower searching for objectives out of a light dropship, an aerial transport with this errata, but not that much slower. So you could do this before in version 2. The coming out of a light aerial transport, you could still search for the objective.
Correct. So what we're talking about is you get the scanning bonus of having the APC next to the building, or now we're talking about the turn is delayed, and you get a double bonus, basically, because the way searching works is you are, it's the turn and you're rolling the dice against that. But if you've got the APC, you've got much better odds, because you're delayed a turn.
Well, do you get the scanning action?
Not so. If you're deploying out and you didn't know, you would not get the scanning action.
So in the previous errata, if you unloaded your APC within 2 inches of the building and the APC didn't move, you got your scan action because the APC didn't move and didn't count as moving from deploying. But now, under shooting on page 3 of the errata, it does say that if you disembark an MF0 unit, that it counts as having moved if it disembarks.
Yes.
So does disembarking count as a move action for a ground unit or not?
Well, that's why I'm saying the next turn. The following turn, you're going to have +2, basically.
So the infantry,
you have 2 transports?
Well, no, but you get the turn bonus plus the transport.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, okay. That makes sense. Because we all know as the timer ticks down, you search the large building faster.
Well,
The,
yeah. I mean, you've had drones and stuff going around, right? That's part of this game, right?
Well, no. As the game goes on, the hidden objectives get louder.
God. So, one of the nice things about having Kirill on, I was just talking to him about this right before we started recording, was that Kirill has done shit in life that we nerds read about and watch on documentaries. So it's nice to have someone with legitimate real world experience in this. And am I a dick for not doing the thank you for your service, Kirill?
Please don't.
It's not Veterans Day. It doesn't count.
Okay, I'm going to take this over for a moment. The thank
Please
you
do.
for your service is, I might be a minority here in the veteran community, but it's the greatest load of crap. Like, I volunteered. Like, nobody drafted me. And not only did I volunteered again and again. Like, I had 3 or 4 reenlistments. I knew exactly what I was doing. Like, don't thank me for my service. Just pay your taxes and write to your congressman to make sure that they don't approve stupid interventions across the world where I get to be away from my family for stupid reasons.
Fair enough.
Soapbox return to you, my friend.
Oh no, I'm going to dump it back to you, because we were talking about I've watched the documentary series. I think it was called CQB. It was about, breaching structures and close quarter battles. I've read a lot, especially on World War II and the hell that was city fighting and block fighting during the Second World War. You've lived some of that shit. You've breached a building, you know the process and procedures. And while I don't sit here and say Drop Zone is an incredibly realistic game, the intention back when the game came out was to have a more plausible science fiction experience. It wasn't Star Wars. It was, I don't know, Black Hawk Down in Space, if you will.
Which is one of the reasons why I was drawn to the original version 1 of the game, just simply because of the realism and how after my movement away from GW games and the stupidity that is 40K, I was really embracing Drop Zone's realism of like, all right, like units search, like units have like squads have a purpose. You're not just going out there to kill like in most 40K scenarios. You're actually going out for objectives. It was an objective-based game, which is, nobody goes out on the battlefield just to kill.
Rewarding being in proper fire lanes and better positioning helps you win.
So, what soapbox did you want me to get on again? I'm sorry.
So if you would be so kind, when I was talking to you about room clearing in CQ and actually like entering a structure in search for an objective, you kind of explained to us exactly what that entails and primarily why this version of the rules especially is so back-asswards, in the sense that being in that structure to establish yourself is detrimental as opposed to beneficial.
All right. So first, let me give a little background, because I don't know who listens to this, but I need to put a couple things out there.
It's only like 4 people, but yeah. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, our listener is going to really appreciate this.
All right. I was in for a little over 10 years on active duty. I had 3 deployments, two to Iraq, 1 to Afghanistan. Deployment number 1 was in 2003 during the invasion, where I performed my duties as a cannon crew member, and I was basically a private. So I didn't know shit other than what my section chief told me to do. Deployment number 2, I was a sergeant. Well, I pinned on sergeant in Iraq, but I worked in the operations center for the battalion. We were in the Sunni Triangle in 2005, and our area was full of all of the people who fled Fallujah in the 2004 battle. So while I wasn't directly knocking down doors during that deployment, I was enabling others by getting them what they needed. And in 2011, I was in Afghanistan, and I was an infantry squad leader, and there was no opportunity to knock down doors because, well, it's all fucking mountains. So just to make sure, there's going to be a lot of caveats. Like, a lot of stuff that I talk about is just training. It's not like practical experience out on the battlefield. But I mean, it's still train as you fight, sort of. So it still kind of counts, right?
Right.
All right. I have never properly cleared a structure in combat. I've only done it in training. I have entered structures that could have contained bad guys, but they've never been like that proper clearing technique that you see in the movies. So, as a squad leader, if I'm tasked with clearing a building, I have 2 fire teams. Each fire team consists of 4 dudes. There's a machine gun, there's a grenade launcher, there's a couple of rifles, and a sergeant leads each one. I'm going to designate either the Alpha or Bravo team to be the security element, meaning they're going to set up their weapons, and they are going to overwatch the building to make sure that if there's bad guys that start shooting at the other fire team that's approaching the building, they're going to make sure that they suppress them, try to kill them if possible. I, as the squad leader, will most likely go with the breaching element or the assaulting element, because that is the culminating point of the battle. That's where my leadership and my experiences will most likely be required. And it always helps to have an extra dude on the breach team. You're going to execute violence of action, which means just be as loud, as crazy, as violent as you can be, basically, when going through a door, because when you're entering a structure that potentially has bad guys, you are always at a disadvantage. They will have created lanes of fire on what's called the fatal funnel, which is the door. It's the funnel that everybody has to go through. So if I was setting up a defensive position inside a building, I would make sure all of my guys were pointed at the door. I mean, their secondary sectors of fire could be some windows, but the primary one would be like, oh shit, there's a team of American soldiers coming. Point at the door. So that's kind of like the most dangerous point of room clearing, is entering through that fatal funnel. Once you're in, you're basically going to use speed, because now the element of surprise is gone, and you're going to bust through as many doors as you can, as many rooms, try to clear the entire structure. You're not going to start searching for anything until you've cleared the entire structure, because why the hell would I start looking for laptops or looking for documents or looking for bad guys in the floorboards when I don't know if the area is secure? I don't know if there's more bad guys with an IED strapped to them, or a AK, or a grenade, or whatever. So you got to have security first. Remarks complete, I guess.
So to bring this back to drop zone, and the defender has their armor being re-rolled, or the attacker has to re-roll the shots against them. Obviously that's to show that the defender's got that secure position, but you're saying like the searching for objectives and stuff while there are people in the building probably wouldn't take place in a real scenario.
No. Never say never, because stranger shit has happened in combat and war, but that is not doctrine. That is not safe. That is not. How thorough could you be in your search when you're constantly looking over your shoulder for bad guys because you don't know if there are any more, or half your force that you could use for searching are pulling security at corridors or junctions or wherever?
Now it's been a little while since I played the beta and like really played the beta, but wasn't there something in the beta that if there was people in the building, there was a less penalty to your searching?
in beta, we had it that if you were in a CQ and you chose to search for the objective, that you sacrificed 3 from that squad's CQ total because those units were searching.
No, it was 3. It was 3 per base.
3 per base. Thank you.
Okay.
Which was objectively easier for, say, a Praetorian than it was for a standard soldier.
So you brought Praetorians up, and I was thinking this as Kirill was talking about it. In the real world, we have special forces, if you will, or more highly trained units that will breach from alternative entrances, for lack of better terms. You know, they drop a ranger squad from the helicopter on the roof. Does that change the way things go?
Yes. When I, as the squad leader, have my squad breach a building and go from the ground up, the enemy inside the building are keenly aware that I have already secured all of the exits, and it's a fight to the death. Or surrender, or,
Right.
There's nowhere for them to go. When the preferred method for breach, according to U.S. doctrine, at least way back in the day when I was in, was if you can breach from the top and go down and clear down, which, I mean, it was never a possibility because doors are on the ground floor and you go up. But that allows the enemy an escape. That allows them a reason psychologically to not fight as hard because they're not fighting to death.
It gives a flight option to fight or flight.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you've got things like rapid insertion in the game, and it makes the assault, essentially in version 2 rule set, it just makes your assault easier and more effective. That's not an inaccurate description of the rule at that point. Then, I mean, it does. If you can breach from an alternative location that they're not expecting, that makes the assault easier.
Yeah, because like generally, you and I, we're going to be blocking ground entrances. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be trying to block the roof. And when an angry ranger busts through, a hatch and comes from the roof, and you're not really expecting it, it works. So there was a scenario back in my training leading up to Afghanistan. If it's all right if I share some stories.
I would love for you to share stories if you'd like.
Okay. So we were assaulting this town, which was basically a training area. And we were doing scenario after scenario after scenario for like 14 or 15 hours a day, like getting beat the hell up. Which, I mean, that's beside the point. I was just reminiscing about that. But it was one of my very first experiences as a squad leader in breaching, and I was way too eager, and I sent my Bravo team in, and my Alpha team was providing security. My Bravo team and I go in, we don't do a good job of searching, and the instructors or the observers, they're called observer controllers, OCs, and they basically like, you're all dead. And we're like, what the hell are you talking about? You didn't check for tripwires. Well, because we were, playing dead, my other team leader, the one that's still alive, took over. And when I say alive, this is all in training. Took over and he's like, well, shit, I'm going to breach too. So he breaches in the exact same entry point where the rest of his squad just died. And then the people that are inside the building, our opposing force, slaughtered the rest of my squad. It was great. It fucking sucked. It was embarrassing as shit. Lying there with like your Alpha team leader next to you, your Bravo team leader on you because they shot him, nominally in training as he was like literally stepping over you. It fucking blew chunks. Anyway, so what we did is we tried This was before our entire unit got plussed up to the point where we had like full infantry platoons. So it was 2 squads, mine and my friends, and we were like, all right, fuck this. Like, this sucks. So we basically picked an alternate route to approach the building, and we approached from the back. The guys that were inside the building, they were in the rafters. They had no clue that we approached from the back. And when we entered, we basically entered through 2 windows. We would cover one window with like 2 M4s, and then we would put in a few guys. And then once a few guys were inside, the other guys would enter from the other window, and we got our entire assault element in that way. And we started shooting at them, and they literally didn't hear us, didn't see us. They were so focused on that door that we shot them all, and we seized the objective. We learned. We entered through an alternate, unexpected entry point.
So, applying some real world training and doctrine to the game, if we can, what do you perceive with the version 2 rule set as the primary problem? Like, how would you fix it to, I don't want to say make it apply to real world, but to make it more plausible to the situation that it's trying to represent? Okay.
So, as we were playtesting, I tried screaming this up and down. I don't know if you guys remember, but the economy of actions is fucked up, is messed up in terms with the balance of infantry and what they can do in a turn, and other units and what they can do in a turn.
No, I remember this. I remember you screaming this because I 100% agreed with this.
So basically, I can run a condor up 9 inches. I spooge out a bear. What is it? 2 or 3 inches away from it?
3 inches away.
2.
Yep. That 2, whatever, 2 or 3. Basically, the bear then moves. Then 3 inches away, or 2 or 3 inches away, the infantry dismount and enter a building. So I can get my infantry up almost up halfway up the board, as long as a large enough building straddles the halfway line of the table. So in the following turn, my infantry, who are using boots and not tracks or wheels, have made it halfway across the objective area, or the combat area, where combat's taking place, and they can reach out and touch basically into the enemy deployment zone. As long as they have weapons that can reach out and touch into the enemy deployment zone. While my tanks, my sabers, can move 4 inches or 3 inches. Like an M1A2 Abrams can effectively move and fire at, give or take, 70 kilometers an hour, if not more. And that, I mean, it all depends on terrain. If you're on flat terrain, you can go much faster. It all depends on how much their gyroscope and their servos can account for. But basically, they can go full speed.
So that's like 45 miles per hour, right?
Mm-hmm. So they can go 45 miles an hour across desert and still fire accurately. And yet, this futuristic-ass Condor dropping off a futuristic-ass saber with a futuristic-ass railgun with a futuristic-ass dude that's lying down articulating this thing, and he can only move 4 inches.
Now wait. It's just one dude, though. I mean, an Abrams has a crew of what, 5?
4.
4?
But what does that crew do? You have a driver. You have a
driver,
tank commander, you have a gunner, and you have a loader.
He's not going to let us answer the questions. He's just going to... No, I'm kidding.
So you basically do away with the gunner and loader because you have a railgun. So you don't actually have a turret in a saber. So you need a driver and you need a commander. And they combine those into one because future.
Right.
Whatever.
Well, I think we were all a little hesitant to having infantry being as amazing as they were. Like initially, like I was like, I don't know that you're supposed to be allowing Scourge warriors to do all this with the overseer and focus, and it seemed a bit much.
So like,
Well, I mean,
And-
when he was talking about economy of actions there too, we didn't really bring up when you're going halfway up the board. Now, it has been addressed slightly in this most current errata, but that, you could do all that movement, go into a building, search, shoot from the wall, and shoot people inside the building all in the same turn.
oh yeah, definitely. I was getting to that. Where you were like, you shouldn't be able to fire
When
at
you're hauling
something-
ass like that.
Well, you shouldn't be able to fire your rifles at something outside, followed up by using your SMGs on something inside, followed up by searching for an objective, and then oops, you found it. All in the same turn.
I want to insert a caveat there because this drove me nuts from the moment they started talking about everyone having a CQ weapon. Like, I'm cool with my Praetorian snipers having a sidearm for CQ. I'm cool with long reach teams having a sidearm for CQ. I am 99.9% certain that if a GI with an M4 carbine walks into a building, he does not drop the carbine and pull out a sidearm because he's suddenly in close quarters.
Nope.
Nor does he carry a separate gun rifle. That's kind of the point of having, like, the M4 was shortened to make it effective for urban combat while still being effective for regular combat. But Immortals have assault rifles for assaulting at long distance, and then combat assault rifles or close quarter rifles for when they're up close. And this shit drives me nuts because if they would have just created a weapon system for it, Immortals have their assault rifle, and it had a CQ alt fire, you solve the problem of them shooting out of the building and in CQ in a single action. You clean up the stat sheet, and you make it that much more plausible.
Make it a special rule for a weapon. CQX. Instead of firing, you get this many dice in close quarters.
Right.
Done. Like, there's elegant ways to solve problems, and then there's convoluted ways where you just add complexity and unneeded bloat to the rules.
This is not anything new. I mean, we've all shared this with TT Combat. It's
Well, and I mentioned earlier, and we brought this up before, all four of us were part of the playtest team. We're probably a third of what was like the Ohio Michigan playtest team.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
And we were all proud of the beta, I think. Sure, there were things that we all wanted changed, but the process of working with Dave and getting what he wanted out of the rules and feeding him information about what did and didn't work in play, I think yes, I'm biased. I think it created what was turning into a very polished rule set.
Well, I'm just going to say this. I sold people on the beta rule set. There were countless people that I said, come check out this game. This is going to be the most balanced game that you're going to play here. Say I was at Adepticon.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the most balanced game that you're going to be able to play. The only things that stuck out in my head that we had to fix with the beta before its initial release was the collateral damage and how that factored into things. And then and this wasn't so much a needed fix, but more from the manufacturer side, TT Combat side, giving a reason to have your fast movers on the table. And we had a fix for it. It's not like there wasn't a fix, but we sold the beta as the most balanced thing, and version 2 does not live up to that.
Well, and this experimental rule, and I said this before recording, this experimental rule is just another clear example to me of this is a game that they don't play. They might publish it, they might make models for it, they might release it. They sure as fuck do not play it.
So
because
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, just because every time they go to release I'm going to air quote the word fix, it's something dumbass like this that doesn't actually resolve any of the issues. And it's hard to use the term playtester because the version of the rule set that released wasn't playtested, at least by this playtest group.
I mean, here, I'll just throw it out there because I'm not covered under an NDA. There was no play testing. We got rules for unit stats after the book was in publish.
After the book was sent to the printer, yeah. Yeah, we saw what would become Battle for Earth, 3 weeks before it went to print?
Not even that, because we didn't even get enough. We only had a couple of days to do anything, offer any suggestions or typos or look for typos, look for mistakes, copy paste errors.
It was
I don't even think
3 to 4 weeks, yeah.
And what's so mind-numbingly infuriating about that was I was invited into the beta team at Origins. It was my second year playing Zone because I went to Origins and I volunteered to run the tournaments. I met Chesney that year, and Chesney let it slip to me that version 2 was in production. And then Don's like, yeah, I'll get you in the beta. So that was before TT Combat had even come into the picture. We had started working on the beta for version 2. And everything kind of went on hold when the shit went down to TT purchase. And then once that was kind of settled and we got back to work and we banged out this rule set. I mean, there was a couple of solid years that we worked on that rule set, cleaning it, balancing it, bringing it to a point that we thought it should be ready to go to print. And then we got this. And it's just so fucking demoralizing to even want to look at the beta to be like, maybe I should just fix that and finish it as a community release. It's just demoralizing to do it because this is the official release. And there's just other games now that I look at. I'm like, well, I'll just play that.
Well, talking about like play testing and stuff, I was more focused on like the fleet community errata.
You
stuff.
And Patrick.
Yeah.
And me.
Yes. Kirill was actually.
Who are you? No, I'm kidding.
So people can understand we were trying to do the resistance fleet. And by we, I mean like Kirill and Patrick and Don and stuff. Kirill was making Lego ships that he was doing demo games and stuff to try and get the resistance fleet on the table and get some playtime in. When I joined, it's hard to be from Ohio and play people in Michigan. So we did I created a drop fleet tabletop simulator thing. And for like 4 months, almost every night between Patrick and myself, we were playing some variation of drop fleet between all the different new units, all the different resistance rules. I was ready to give up my Overlord name and play Fleet with Resistance when they were released, what we sent to be released. It's safe to say that the Resistance... Quick. Yeah.
My Diaper Demon is awake, and I am conducting Diaper Demon duties. So if you hear a baby, that's why.
If you just want to mute up, we'll keep BSing. Unless he muted. Unless he's going to scream.
But yeah, so the fleet errata, the resistance and stuff, that was all initially supposed to come out with Battle for Earth, and then the community errata slowly shifted to, okay, we'll release that separately. Because Battle for Earth already went to publish before the errata changes had been finalized. So all the stuff like Squadron for the UCM and different rules that
Stuff
made the game.
stuff that wasn't only tested, but like, and I hate using this term, but tournament tested. Like we collectively played multiple tournaments where we got to use these rules and beat these rules up in competitive play.
The largest tournaments anywhere between Michigan and Adepticon, those were the largest tournaments anywhere in the world for Job Fleet at the time. These were in play.
My entire Resistance fleet for, what is it? Not Michigan GT, the one in Chicago.
Adepticon.
My entire list was predicated on playtesting and min-maxing Resistance, to where, remember, I took like a bunch of the destroyers with torpedoes.
Oh, your UCM, what are those?
Havanas.
Havanas,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
you broke that, and we had to change it.
I was sad in breaking it because I really liked that play style, but it needed to happen.
Yeah.
But so we were all play testers. We got to experience, and it was nice. It was fun being a play tester.
It was.
I think the biggest change was, like as soon as the book went to publish, we found out, oh, there are other developers here besides Dave. And that changed how the game played.
Well, it was also the 10th or 11th hour of, we were asked, like, play this, what are the issues balance wise and all that, and then you get presented something else and you're like, I can't even begin to approach how this can be balanced because there's just not enough information.
Yeah, here's rules, but no stats. So you're trying to apply the stats that you had for the version of the beta that we were working on.
Well,
and you're looking at it going, this is impossible. This is ridiculous. This is.
Well, and then on top of that, there was how many hours of playtesting that basically was it led to nowhere because that whole subset of rules was thrown away.
We
playtested something that was never published.
Yeah, I mean the community stuff. I still stand by that. It was super balanced, super well refined. But when the London GT was it Salute's the one that happened first, where version 2 was released. That's when we found out that a lot of fleet changes happened between what we submitted, and it's just like, what are you guys doing over there? Because like the Shaltari monitor changed, which was super overpower, happened. The Resistance fleet changed happened, and I was like,
and the Resistance fleet changes weren't done for any other reason than formatting of the book.
Well, yes. But it has lasting ramifications.
And despite all that, what sticks in my craw still, like the thing that just I think was my tipping point was the we're more concerned about selling models than we are about tournament players thing.
Oh, I didn't think we were going to bring that up, but
it just that was my fuck off moment, if you will. I'm not a hardcore tournament player. I'm not. I like playing in tournaments because the community that we had was a very friendly and fun and inviting community.
It breaks you out of your local meta.
It does.
You guys completely took in and embraced my kid. He was like 12 at the time, if not earlier. When
I played him in Fleet at the GT.
Mm-hmm.
And I drew him.
Yeah. Well, our very first tournament for Drop Zone was in Michigan, and man, I don't remember how it was when my wife and I first started dating. So it must have been 2016, 2015. So my kid's 15 now. So like 11,
Jesus,
10.
he is?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think anybody who would tell you who attended any of the tournaments that the zone fleet groups were very accommodating. Always new players, always new people with new armies that you'd be able to go, oh, okay, well, we'll pair you up with a couple of guys and they'll get you situated over the tournament. I think it was a very, very welcoming community, and I mean we're still friends with all these people. None of them play Drop Zone or Drop Fleet anymore.
Now we all play Warlord games.
Well, until I release my game, and then I'm going to make all of you play my game.
Well, we'll get to that.
Nice segue. I was getting ready to bring that up. I was about to say though,
we've got one thing to cover then.
Yeah, we do.
Before we get there.
Well, and real quick, is there anything else we devolved into venting? Was there anything else in the errata or the FAQ other than how they continue to break PHR that we needed to address?
You need your soapbox there for a minute.
No, you know what? Just fuck these guys. I mean, seriously. So it used to be when you build a PHR army, you could mix and match Type 2 walkers and Type 1 walkers together, right? So if you took an armor group, you could mix and match your Type 1s. If you took a heavy group, you could mix and match your Type 2s. You can't now. When version 2 first came out, you could mix and match Type 1 and 2s. Now, if I want to run a heavy group and I want to put them in a Nord, I can take 4 Odins, and that's the end of the conversation. Or I can take a couple of Type 1s and a couple of Odins. It's just continuously, and you know what? I'll guarantee you, it has nothing to do with the fact that the rule's the problem, and it has everything to do with they can't figure out how to code it into the fucking generator. Or army builder, whatever.
You might be right, because it's very easy to write the rule for that.
Okay, soapbox is gone. Josh, you had some things though from our last.
No. I did want to bring up behemoths because there has been. I did want to bring this up because TT Combat did release on their army builder the stats, and some people found them. That the stats that were released
release would be a strong word.
Okay, the stats provided by TT Combat through their army builder, those are stats that are in line with information that we saw, minus some special rules. I did not see all the special rules there, but that is very similar to stuff that we play tested.
Yes. The rules that were garbage when we play tested them.
What am I allowed and not allowed to say about behemoths?
I don't even know, man. Whatever they've shown, here's what I can say about them. We play tested them, and then the night after I play tested them, I rewrote stat blocks and sent them off because I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work with the multi-zone thing. And
yeah, just be careful because those special rules are tied to that. So
yeah.
So the current version was after the current way that you have your behemoths with offensive, core, and mobility zones that you fire at. That was the best we could do. Initially, we got basically stat sheets for like let's say the big walker for UCM that you see in the Battle for Earth book. I'm not going to give away the name. I'm not going to give away what weapons it has. Just that bad boy, right? You could individually fire on all of its weapons or the core or any of its legs. And it became very clear why walkers are not a thing in modern armies, because I'm just going to fire at the legs. Yeah, that's it.
So I mean,
So-
before we get too far into the discussion on them, I think we all came to the conclusion that behemoths might be, if you draw a parallel to GW, they might really more fit into an APOC style system, not so much a standard game.
So that was my recommendation after the first few initial play tests with giant Lego walkers that we made. And the proposal that I made was basically go to like a more simple, almost like a more simplified version of Zone, where every Saber squad is going to have 9 dudes or 9 tanks. And
we did give them the exact playthrough of like how to do it. It just was a game with no infantry.
Yeah. So every game with behemoths that I played turned into, I'm going to fire everything at the behemoth if I don't have one, at an attempt to slow it down. Otherwise, it will wreck and I have no chance. Or it turned into Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla, and nothing else on the table mattered. And it wasn't fun. Like, none of the games.
It was such a large commitment. It was a race to the bottom, right? Like, you either hurt the behemoth enough to kill it, and then your opponent was screwed, or your opponent's behemoth cleared you out because it's a board clear.
Now, obviously, we're only talking about the leak stats from that were on the TT Combat website. Nothing has been finalized. We're only discussing what has the public has seen.
So there was that point in beta though where we had them as just a single damage points block with armor and weapons, and you treated it just like an oversized Hades or an oversized Thunderstorm. It was just a big ass unit, and that was playable. But
it didn't. I don't think that fit with the vision of Dave, what he had for the units, which is kind of why we moved away from it.
And I remember commenting that just because Dave had the vision didn't mean it was going to work.
Yeah.
That's how I still feel about behemoths.
Yeah. So like, we were playtesters. I guess I was very aware of my role with Zone and Fleet, where I'm an advisor. I tell you what I think works. I tell you what I think doesn't work, but ultimately I'm not making decisions for the company, and I'm not impacting the bottom line. So, take everything that I say with a grain of salt.
Right. And ultimately, I guess we should add, we're not playtesters anymore. Well, maybe Jordan is. Jordan, aren't you an agent?
I'm not really terribly active at the moment because of work.
Are any of them?
I can't really say. I haven't talked a lot with a lot of other agents. So.
It is encouraging to hear that there are 70 agents, or close to 70 agents out there. I don't know what they're doing, but I guess that was the point of the most
because
recent
they're secret
combat
agents, man.
So, as Chris said on Facebook, the caveat of these behemoth stats, he did say that they were old stats and all that. And there has been a lot of time for development
Oh, shit.
in between now and then. So we are only commenting on something that we did, a year and a half, 2
years ago.
Now.
Yeah.
Right, 2 years ago now. So this is,
No, listen. I think there's a strong track record of units releasing with good, well-balanced rules, and that there should be no concern that these things will fuck the game even harder when they come out.
True, but there's not necessarily anything constructive about dissing rules from 2 years ago that they said are old rules and we're not using anymore. We don't have any commentary on the current state of behemoths.
Yeah, but we will.
Well, when they're officially released.
If and when they get released and we get to play with the behemoths once they're released, sure.
Well, I think we've talked about Zone probably as much as we can make ourselves talk tonight. But if I am not mistaken, Josh, you had some things that you needed to say to Jordan.
Jordan hurt my soul. Was it last week when you guys recorded when I heard him talking about Warcaster? It just broke me, Jordan. I thought you were better than this.
I wasn't expecting that they were going to keep asking me questions and make me talk 10 minutes about a game I'd played twice.
All right, so I'll just do a quick correction on Warcaster. So Warcaster is a new game put out by Privateer Press. It's a skirmish, sci-fi game. What's really interesting about the game is that it is, you can spend 5 minutes reading the rule book or just play the game for 5 minutes, and you'll know all the rules to the game. It's very simple. What the game offers, though, is a lot of hard choices in that you are starved for resources between the arc that you put on your units, the cards that you have in your hand, how you activate units. It's a very simple game, but has a lot of deep choices as far as how you play through the game. The one thing that really hurt me was Jordan was saying that there was a Warcaster on the table. You are the Warcaster in Warcaster. You control the guys. I initially kind of laughed at Privateer Press when they first said, "Hey, we're doing this game. It's going to be this, and you get to recycle your units." I thought it was kind of the dumbest thing, but playing the game, and I've got probably close to 20 games underneath my belt with it. It's a really solid game. So if anybody's interested in a sci-fi game with a pretty low barrier to entry, like you can play a full skirmish game for like $150. It plays really well, and you don't have to spend a lot of time with rules or fussing about. It does not play like War Machine. So if anybody's played War Machine in the past and said, it's Privateer Press, it's a completely different game. It's very, very simple, but has layers of resource management, which makes those compelling choices.
Like an onion?
Like an onion. Warcaster is like an onion.
I will say I did play Aaron in Warcaster last week, and it was a larger game, a skirmish size, whereas piece count was lower my first two times, and the starvation of resources came through a lot more. And I enjoyed the tactical choices of that game a lot more than, because the first couple of times I played it kill a guy, my whole side could get cleared, and then I just all brought him back in. There wasn't as much bounce back in the larger game. And talking with Aaron, with what he's read into it, it plays slightly, depending on the size of the game. Certain units are better at smaller games, and certain units might be better in a much larger game. So
yes. So like if you were playing like the max size of a skirmish game is like 8 units, mm-hmm. 8 normal game of Warcaster, which most people are not playing because they don't have forces that big just yet, is about like 15 units. And I mean, we could do another podcast on Warcaster, but even if you get in at the skirmish level, like I said, for $150 ish, you're going to have a good time. You don't have to spend a lot of time with the rules. It plays very quickly.
I mean, you can get into Gates of Antares for a lot less. I'm just saying.
I know, but you can't read the rule book for 5 minutes and understand how the game plays.
That is very true. Unless you played bolt action, and then you can.
Well, that's a fair point. If you're familiar with bolt action, Antares is pretty similar. But yeah, so that's my soapbox. It just hurt me with the way Jordan was describing Warcaster, and I felt compelled to come on here and organize this discussion tonight.
And you know what? Despite the contrast paints, you have a nice looking Warcaster army.
Oh, thank you.
Kirill's muted. I'm not sure if his diaper demon is giving him trouble or if he's just cussing at us.
I'm here.
Both. Oh, okay.
My diaper demon's in my hand.
What up, diaper demon?
I have my headphones on so he can't hear you.
Oh,
He can't hear all the cussing.
Oh, like he doesn't hear it any other time. So I guess before we wrap up, Kirill, you know, now you've had a chance to hop on here, and we've got to talk about your experiences and your not only your experiences real world, but your experiences gaming wise. You were working on a system of your own, were you not?
Yes. And
did you want to take a couple minutes to talk about that?
Yes, I do. So I very quickly came up with a name for my gaming company the other day when you're like, hey, we're going to do this podcast on Wednesday. and I created a a basic landing page real quick. So it's called Folda Gap Games. And hopefully you all get the reference with the Folda Gap. Please tell me you do.
No.
Cold War plans. Basically, it's a low-lying region or flat region in Germany where we were expecting the Germans to the Soviets to cross if the Cold War ever went hot. Yes. So the game is called World War III Company Command, and it's very similar. The inspiration came from the work and time I put in on Zone version 2, and then the frustrations with the final product that came out. It's a 10mm company level game where you control several platoons, which are equal to battle groups in Zone. And the game is very much objective based. But your objectives aren't necessarily going to be like a point on the table. Your objective could be, hey, I need to get to the other side of the table. Hey, I need to hold this area of the table. Hey, I need to kill this unit. There's going to be a lot of variety. The setting for World War III Company Command takes place probably the start of everything happening is like 10 to 20 years into the future, where it gives technology enough time to kind of mature to where you can have very interesting things in the game. Plus, in 10 to 20 years, I mean, realistically, global warming is going to be a crap show. Who knows what America's going to be like and the rest of the world. So in the Company Command universe, the U.S. has experienced balkanization, where it's broken apart and the government's trying to hold it together, but there's all sorts of different factions popping up. So you have the opportunity to play a resistance faction of sorts. You get a U.S. resistance where you could be like a rogue police company. You could be a very militant militia. You could be whatever you want whenever those faction rules actually get written. Yeah. I actually had a lot of fun brainstorming ideas for militias with Joel, who hasn't been on here, but it was a blast. So the U.S. has left NATO, which left a power vacuum in Europe, which Russia seized upon to recapture all of its former Eastern European republics, which opened up the European theater of war for World War III. China recaptured Taiwan and is flexing its muscle in the Pacific and pushed out the U.S. by sinking 2 aircraft carriers, which forced us to leave the Pacific as a major force. So like the U.S. is no longer a global power. The U.S. is very much dealing with its own issues. You have the conflict with Pakistan and India going hot. You have the conflict with India and China going hot. You have a lot of conflict in Africa in this future setting. ISIS has resurged and taken basically all of Saharan Africa with a good chunk of Saudi Arabia and Iraq and Kuwait and those areas. So now ISIS is an actual like strong entity instead of just a collection of dudes in pickups. So overall, the setting is very dark, very depressing, very much kind of like what could happen, but hopefully doesn't.
So, what kind of scale? I don't know that if you've mentioned that just yet.
So, the scale is 10 millimeter, very much like Drop Zone. I battled with making it 15 millimeter because there's a lot more terrain options available. There's a lot more models available.
You got Team Yankee stuff out there already.
Yeah. But I decided to go with 10 millimeter because it allows you like a more realistic look at ranges in terms of the size of the battlefield. And one time that I saw Team Yankee played, it was like a parking lot of tanks, just like 40K, which I'm trying to get away from.
War.
Yeah, which that's crap. Like any game that breaks that realism barrier for me by just parking the tanks or parking vehicles or massing your guys, it doesn't do it for me. So in terms of how the game is mechanically, I wanted to incorporate a couple of things from my experience in the Army. I wanted to make sure that there was like a level of fog of war or friction when you're commanding your forces on the table, as in things don't always happen the way that you want them to. You don't always get to command your forces as well as you want. I want weather and visibility to be a thing. So like in Warhammer 40,000, back in 3rd edition, they introduced night fighting rules, but it always felt like a pasted on thing after the fact. I want to build those mechanics into the game from the get-go, as in a more technically superior force that has night vision goggles that chooses to fight at night is going to have an advantage over a force that doesn't have night vision goggles.
Makes sense.
Things of that nature. So you're going to have weather and visibility. Weather could be extreme cold or extreme hot. In extreme cold conditions, vehicles don't always function the way that you want. Extreme hot, people don't always function the way that you want. So there's that aspect. Persistent battlefield effects. Something that really bugged me was when I destroyed a Land Raider in 40K, it just disappeared off the table.
Right.
That's a huge chunk of steel or ceramite or whatever that should remain.
Mm-hmm.
Or in Drop Zone where the ferrum blows up and you just remove it. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Something remains there.
No, that's something I loved about bolt action was you blow up a tank. That is a piece of scenery now.
Yep. So the game in its current state, and it's still pretty early playtesting, any vehicle of significant size that gets destroyed has a chance to remain on the table or create a crater if it blows up. Other persistent effects would be if you call in an artillery strike, like heavy howitzers create craters on the table, which infantry can now use and can inhibit mobility for your vehicles. Another aspect or concept that I wanted to incorporate was to make sure that the game didn't feel like you were just demolishing buildings like in the early version 1 of Zone. I don't know if you guys remember that. Mm-hmm. Whereas it was basically whoever brought the most weapons to demo buildings.
Yeah.
Nobody actually shot at each other. So I came up with a system for rules of engagement where there's basically 3 tiers, and when you build your list, you decide on if you're going to go restrictive, permissive, or scorched earth. So restrictive would be comparable to the occupation forces in Iraq after the invasion when we were occupying, 2004 and on, where you're not allowed to call artillery on a block of civilians. You're not allowed to take tanks down an alley and just mess things up. you're not allowed to fire indiscriminately on buildings. Permissive is basically like you're invading, but things happen. But you're still not allowed to fire on buildings that are identified as protected or units that are identified as protected. So certain missions would have, it's called like protected status structures. So you could have like a school, a hospital, a mosque, or whatever. And hold on for a second.
You're fine.
Not a problem. So we have kind of put Kirill on the spot with this, 'cause I
Right.
think we only give him like 3 days notice. Like, hey, we're doing this podcast. You might want to plug your game. So like you said, he's got his website, and I think Derek will put that in the description for the episode, and we can also
Don't put responsibilities on me. It's you're lucky enough that I add intro and outro music and post this at all.
All right, I'm back. Sorry.
No problem,
So-
man. So protected
All right.
status on buildings.
So you have protected status on buildings where, like, you can't indiscriminately fire artillery at a school. That's a war
Right.
crime. But the last rule of engagement category that you get is scorched earth, and that's kind of World War II stuff, like when we firebombed Dresden, or when the Germans and the Russians were going at it in Stalingrad, and no fucks were given.
You weren't fighting in a city anymore. You were fighting in literally a pile of rubble.
Yep. So depending on which rule of engagement that you take during list construction limits kind of how easily you can get victory points. If you go restrictive, it's going to be much easier for you to get victory points because, well, you're taking a hindrance. Your opponent could take permissive or scorched earth rules of engagement, and they can indiscriminately call artillery because their rules of engagement allow for it, but they won't be able to score as easily when it comes to objectives towards the end of the game. So it's kind of a balance that you take that you create during list construction. Do you want a certain flavor of army, or do you want another flavor of army? And it allows you to get really different results or really different feels to the same models, to the same list organization, just with that one change.
Yeah, it
I
sounds
mean,
like they can make some compelling choices.
I'm a scorched earth player. There's no question about that.
So the other unique aspect to the game is what's called a strategic battle map. Most games that we play, we have reserves, we have close air support, and it always felt like it's being shoehorned in how we use aircraft. Like in 40K, you have all these giant floating bricks on really fiddly bases, and you get more and more of them. Well, it doesn't make sense to have a fighter like in Drop Zone. What are they called? Archangels. It doesn't make sense for Archangels to be on the table because they would literally fly over that battle space in a second or two with how fast they're going. So the strategic battle map is essentially a sideboard that you use, which has a spot for your reserves, your forces that are in readiness that are getting ready to enter the airspace where your aircraft that are supporting you are flying above, and rear echelon. So rear echelon is like a new concept that I want to bring into tabletop gaming, where artillery doesn't belong on the tabletop.
Right.
A howitzer, unless you're attacking it to kill it, does not belong on the table. There is a minimum range for a howitzer. There's a minimum range for a mortar. The only mortar that belongs on the table is a 60 millimeter mortar because it's a direct fire weapon that's used at the platoon or company level. So when you build your list, you either build combat platoons, which would be like a platoon of Abrams or a platoon of mechanized infantry, and your strategic assets, which could be like a psychological operations squad, a unit of hackers, a unit of helicopters, a close air support aircraft that live on that strategic battle map, and they can affect your enemy's strategic assets, or they can affect your battlefield, which is like your actual tabletop. There's also rules for infiltrating your strategic assets into your enemy's zones, so that you could mess with their reserves, or you could mess with their strategic assets. So you could potentially infiltrate something like a special forces team behind enemy lines in this game, and affect their artillery, to basically take it out. So there's multiple ways to skin the same cat. There's multiple ways to approach the same target. Or you could fire your artillery from your rear echelon on the enemy's rear echelon, because artillery is really, 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 really long range, and it's getting longer by the year as we make better howitzers and better ammunition.
So I'm
totally forgot to mention
you on
what.
I was just going to say, as putting you on the spot. So you were mentioning you just got the domain, and when could people come check the website out and see some more information about what you're trying to put forth?
Probably next month.
It's too much pressure.
I know, it's between work and the baby, who he's got some medical issues, so it takes a lot of extra time. And just life in general. It's difficult. But my goal, now that I actually have kind of started doing things online, is to start putting ideas and tidbits out there to build interest. So,
well, I think you can probably definitely get some people interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm interested.
I love that concept of the strategic board with the off-board artillery and the rear echelon forces, and actually being able to affect the army off the board. I really like that. You're playing games within games at that point.
Mm-hmm. So one last idea that I want to bring up, and then I'll kind of shut up about this game that I'm working on, because I'll talk about it for days. I've been working on it for like a year and a half now, if not more. Is how I implemented fog of war and friction on the battlefield. So as combat platoons are entering the battlefield, they get assigned an order. And an order can be something as broad as assault, maneuver, hold, broad categories of things that you want that platoon to be better at that particular moment. And whatever order that platoon is under determines how easily the squads in that platoon are able to perform actions. So if a platoon is tasked with assaulting and they are under the assault order, any squad that wants to do something like provide overwatch, or I forget my breakdown of how I limited everything, but like, let's say you want to do something that doesn't jive with the platoon order. It means you do less actions, and it means that those actions become harder to perform. So it's supposed to represent like the briefing that the soldiers got beforehand. It's like, this platoon's going to be assaulting that objective. And then the platoon leader gets on the net and says, change of mission. We're going to be defending this area. Well, all of your claymores are put away. You might not have brought claymores. It takes time to change kind of like the tempo of what a platoon is doing, and disseminate that information, which I'm hoping to capture in the order versus action mechanic in the game. So squads perform actions, but the actions are limited by the orders that the platoons are given. And you're very limited in how frequently you can change a platoon's order. Basically, your commander can issue only one new order at the beginning of the turn.
So I'm imagining then that if you piss around at the rear echelon, you can actually screw up how they issue orders or disrupt orders issued to units. And yeah, I'm with you.
So, I'm sorry. Can I plug one more mechanic here?
Yeah.
So the job that I'm doing after the Army is I am a systems engineer for the United States Army, as in a civilian. I get to work with military equipment, and I am lucky enough to sometimes see the really cool stuff on the horizon. And what I see on the horizon is really, really awesome. So where we and other nations are moving into active countermeasures because you can only slap so much armor on a tank.
Right.
And by active countermeasures, I mean like the close-in weapon system that you see on ships, where you're using just volume of fire from a chain gun to shoot things out of the sky, directed energy weapons like lasers to intercept missiles and intercept artillery rounds, reactive armor systems where you're basically exploding grenades within a certain radius of the vehicle to set off explosives before they reach you, so that by the time that they reach you, all of their chemical energy is gone and just the kinetic energy remains. So the way that weapons work, like the way that units work in this game is each unit has certain countermeasures and certain weapons, and certain countermeasures are more effective against other weapons. If that kind of makes sense.
I'm following you.
So it becomes this cat and mouse game when you build your list. Do you focus on just this kind of countermeasure because you're expecting your opponent to bring these kinds of weapons? Or do you try to bring units with varied countermeasures to kind of cover all, the whole plethora of options of what your opponent could bring, but then you're not really protecting well against any particular threat?
So the depth of option really excites me, but the wealth of option makes me worry that you end up in a lot of paperwork and bookkeeping.
I know. And that's really where I'm at. As in, I have the individual systems rather well developed, but it's making it work together and trimming the fat and reducing the extras, reducing the things that are not needed, reducing down to the bare bones of what will make this game function.
Right.
Making it complicated enough, but not too complicated.
Yep. So my idea for the strategic battle map is to have a 3x5, not a 3x5, a 2.5, like a basic playing card with your rules of engagement clearly visible. So both you and the player have a visual reference with whatever climate you're fighting in clearly visible with a specific place for that card. So you're going to have visual reminders throughout the game, letting you know what rules are in effect.
So the primary battle mat, are you thinking 4x4?
Yeah. So 4x4, because most people or most game stores have 4x6 mats or 4x6 tables. That gives you a play area with an area for your strategic battle map, right, and an area for all of your models.
Yeah, my game table is already partitioned off and ready for this.
So I'm hoping people are interested. I'm hoping that the market isn't so saturated that there is just no interest and nobody cares.
Well, there are not that many World War III close future games out there at the moment.
There's not much close future to begin with. You have basically going into the Cold War to like the 80s, and then there's a gap, and then you start going to like super future, like Antares or
right,
40K or whatever other games that are out there.
And when you get to something like Team Yankee, it seems to be a very much love-hate kind of thing. Like, I think the type of player that this is going to appeal to is not the Team Yankee player. It's not going to be I want to park 30 Abrams in a parking lot and open fire on a bunch of T-70s.
So the idea here is to make every unit matter to where you're never going to be crowded on the table, which is one of the reasons why I went with 10 millimeter. And an Abrams is going to matter. You're not going to put two Abrams close together, because what happens when an artillery strike lands on them? What happens when they get assaulted by short range disposable rocket launchers or whatever?
No, you're going to run that way far ahead of your infantry, so they have no infantry support, because that's the best way to use a tank.
Yep, that's how it's done. So,
I hope that was sarcasm.
Oh yeah. I guess.
Okay.
I was jotting notes, taking some tactical advice. Cross that out.
So that's where I'm at. Hopefully, as people listen to this whenever it gets released, they will be interested somewhat and do a quick Google of Fulda Gap Games or World War III
Spell
Company
that for
Command.
Me, will you?
Fulda, Fulda, Gap, as in thigh gap, Games.
What's a thigh gap?
It's something that you and I don't have.
Joke. All right. Well, does anybody have anything else, or should we call this 90 minutes a good?
No, I think I've said my piece. I've corrected Warcaster, and we've had a good discussion of the errata. I know that was commented by one person on Discord, and we have delivered.
That listener is going to be very happy with us. And listen, listener, your happiness makes this all worth it. Person whose name we don't know.
I mean, I could tell you, but should we really highlight that person? They knew who.
I don't know.
They know who they are.
They know what they've done. Jordan, you got any final thoughts tonight?
I do not.
Back to normal with you. Joshua, any final thoughts for you tonight?
No, I'm good. I appreciated the discussion tonight, and it was nice to talk a little playtest stuff.
Yeah, it was nice to get that off our chest.
Yeah.
Kirill, any final thoughts for you?
Yeah, as COVID stuff lifts and my rules get more finalized, I hope that you guys will help me playtest.
I hope that you'll let us do that, and that you'll come back to talk about this again in the future.
Thank you.
You hope that future events like these will affect us in the future?
Yeah. I just hope that COVID restrictions will eventually ever lift. I'm waiting for the 95% effective vaccine to get rolled out just in time for the virus to undergo a major mutation and be like 12% effective.
Well, it's 12% more effective than you are right now. So,
that's true.
Roll up that sleeve.
That's true. I heard a joke the other day talking about how the rest of the world is getting COVID, but China, they got it right off the bat.
Oh.
I'm going to leave us on that. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight. Have yourselves a wonderful evening, and we'll talk again in the future.